Plenty of people who are not pagans seem to think that it is a single coherent religion with all the usual trappings: books, temples, founders, leaders, structures, rules, and order. This can cause some confusion. Even within paganism, people seem to think Druids are all organized like the church, which is a long way wide of the mark. There are times when pagans, and for that matter, Druids, find it easier to go along with this. For one thing, not everyone has the time or inclination for a proper explanation. The most obvious point to make is that paganism is not a religion, but a passably useful way of lumping together a like-minded minority. There are benefits to be derived from speaking with one voice or being recognized as a group. There are many traditions within paganism: witches, druids, heathens, shamans, Hellenics, Dianics, Kemeticists, Religio Romano, to name a few of the more obvious ones. There are a great many eclectics and own path folk as well. Taken as individual groups, none of the subgroups within paganism is big enough to speak productively to government and the like. The grouping under a shared pagan banner has served us politically and in handling the media, but is better understood as a pressure group rather than any kind of organized religion. Even the above breakdown into major subgroups is misleading. There are plenty of people who identify across those lines and who also connect with other religions. There are significant numbers of Christian pagans and pagan Buddhists, along with pretty much any other cross-pollination you can think of. To further complicate things, subgroups can be divided into sets that can be significantly different from each other. It's like metal subgenres. Druids can be animists, polytheists, and non-theists. Alternatively, you might look at revivalists, reconstructionists, and neo-druids. You could divide along the lines of Irish Druidry, Welsh, French, and non-European, or further divide by country. Each has its own view of druids, and many druids are not in orders. Some orders are more demanding of conformity than others. Druidry is not a single coherent religion any more than Christianity is, once you get beneath the surface. However, in our case, the divisions are frequently arbitrary and tend to depend on your reasons for wanting to clump people into groups in the first place. We could divide up any of the pagan subgroups in this way, breaking paganism down into even smaller religions. Start dealing with individual pagans and you'll find exceedingly individual definitions of the path. Welsh Druid, Kitchen Witch, Celtic Shaman, Witchy Druid, Polytheistic Bardic Druid, Brythonic Reconstructionist. There are probably more kinds of paganism than there are living pagans to embody it all. There is a lot of commonality between these labels and ways of practicing, just as there is between the many subsets of other religions. When you compare Mormons, Catholics, Methodists, and Jehovah's Witnesses as a small subset of Christian diversity, it's clear that you can squeeze a lot of variety under one religious heading. However, in most defined religions, there's also a defined focus of worship and some core features in common, and we do not have those. Here are some of the key things we might be expected to hold in common if paganism were to be a single religion. A core text we hold sacred, also absent in Shinto, although we do have ancient pagan texts for some paths. A named founder, like Jesus, Abraham, or Muhammad. Shinto has no named founder, and the modern witches have Gerald Gardner and Alex Saunders arguably. Polytheistic religions tend to put less emphasis on founders than monotheism does. A set of core rules. Many paths have their own ethical guidelines, but those do not deliver hard and fast thou shouts that conform to other people's expectations of what ethics should look like. A single agreed opinion about the nature of deity, life after death, or the meaning of life. There can be more coherence within subgroups, but even here, ideas can vary a lot. we may be unique in this. Some kind of earthly leader of the faithful. There is no leader of pagans, nor do any of the major subgroups have a pope equivalent. Jainism and Shinto have no leadership in this style either. Financial structures and property. Any financial agreements are at a very local level, which is also true of Jainism and Shinto. Converts. This tends to be a monotheistic issue. Most traditional religions that relate to culture and heritage have no interest in cultures, so Judaism, Jainism and Shinto do not recruit either. Physical structures to worship in. Ancient pagans had temples, but for the greater part we do not have our own spaces and do it outside. Plenty of other groups have managed with less formal meeting spaces at times in their history too. This list covers the external trappings and actions that can easily be seen by those considering a religion from the outside. Thus, while many may assume paganism is a lot like everything else, on closer investigation, there are plenty who will decide that it isn't a proper religion at all, because it lacks these obvious features. The not a proper religion argument is popular with those who wish to denigrate and disempower. However, given that there are two internationally recognized religions, Jainism and Shinto, that also lack a lot of the external trappings, this seems at best a poor excuse for prejudice. There is a lot more to spiritual coherence than structure. Our wider culture's tendency to emphasize superficial structure can make us oblivious to the far more important issues of what a religious group actually does in the world. It is possible to discard the idea of religions as buildings and sacred books, and to consider them in terms of how they function and what they do. This both sheds an interesting light on more established religions and gives room for paganism and other less structured faiths in the process. When we consider the activities of pagans, we can bring to the table the undertaking of ritual, rites of passage, prayer and celebration. These are clear manifestations of spirituality and arguably of religion. Paganism has community and service aspects like many religions. There are teaching aspects, and there is an informal priesthood. We have a great deal that is spiritual in nature and far less of the physical baggage that has attached itself to most standard religions in the past 2,000 years or so. It would be tempting to argue that what we do is, in fact, older and more authentic. It is certainly more real. Critics on the outside of paganism will often suggest that a lack of the usual trappings means a lack of depth. The flip side of this is that those same trappings can make it easy to go through the motions without doing anything remotely spiritual, uplifting, or meaningful. The person who has no standard forms to fall back on is obliged to invent and discover as they go, and has no choice but to live their path. Such an approach demands relevance to the world we live in, requires responsibility, and necessitates independent thinking. There are groups within paganism that choose or have fallen into fixed practice, come up with settled ritual and magical methods, adopt fixed prayers, or otherwise land in a groove. Anyone wanting and finding one of these more structured manifestations can, of course, treat it exactly like a regular religion. If you want an authority to turn to, a source of direction and the like, there are groups that can give you this. You can find codes, laws, and required reading lists, clothing regulations, and all of that structure. However, this is a complex and nuanced business, its precise functioning having everything to do with the people involved. Individuals who want rules and a guru will find them, whether they were offered or not. In Monty Python's The Life of Brian, Brian loses a sandal while fleeing from a crowd. They take this as a sign that they are also to remove the left sandal. That's a subset of religious people in a nutshell. If you want that from paganism, you can find or fabricate it. Outside of comedy films, this is a dull and unrewarding way to go. That which is understood is always so much more powerful than that which is merely accepted. It is possible to enter fairly structured spaces and not be ruled by them. With its 3 levels of training, ritual designs, and graded attire, the order of bards, ovates, and druids would seem at first glance to be a bastion of structure. Those who go there seeking structures seem to find what they need. There's a lot of difference between an enabling structure and power for the sake of it. People who want authority turn up in all religions and are easy to spot because they go around telling people what to think and how to feel. Authority needs to enforce itself. Sadly, there are often desperately fragile egos in the mix, craving the reassurance that comes when no one argues with you. There are others who seek fame, power and status and wealth and simply see religion as a means to those ends. All too often, formal religions are not the enabling structures we might want them to be, but are instead corrupted by individual and corporate desires for power. As human beings, we seem to find strong leadership enticing. We like it when someone else takes the risks, makes the decision, solves the problems, and tells us what to do. Religions can be very good at matching those who wish to graze quietly with those who wish to be shepherds. It is also worth remembering that you can just as easily match those who do not want to make much effort with the kind of shepherd who runs a very lucrative abattoir. It is important to know yourself. Are you looking for comfort? A sense of security? Some rules to follow? A nice plan for the afterlife and a routine? If so, then stay with the regular religions and structures. If, on the other hand, you want spiritual experiences and to find your own answers, are not afraid to take risks, face setbacks and ask lots of questions, then doing as you are told is never going to satisfy you. The structure of religion is so often about control. There are too many issues around who has the right to make whom do what. The right to punish, to exile, own and to devalue can be tied up in religious thinking too. And these are destructive influences across the globe. We're much more interested in the power to control the self and the self-discipline that is all about what happens inside an individual. The trouble with having no structure or system, as is so often the case for independent modern pagans, is ascertaining what you might replace that with. Figuring everything out from scratch is rewarding and a profound journey in its own right, but you may have to start by working out what to work out in the first place, and this can lead to a great deal of real reinvention. It is possible to learn a lot from the history and diversity of religion, pagan and non-pagan alike. We can learn without subscribing to any one system, drawing inspiration without abdicating personal power. We're not suggesting a pick and mix attitude to spirituality, but a process of stepping back to examine what religion is and does. We can learn from the areas of overlap and commonality. We can learn from the places of difference and conflict. We've gathered together much of what we've learned from reading about different religions and listening to a great many people. This is not the whole story. It's not even the tip of one. The drive for spirituality in humans and the history of religion are two vast topics that it would probably take lifetimes to understand. If you want to learn more about exploring spirituality, paganism, and many other ideas, please take a look at our book, Pagan Portals, Spirituality Without Structure by Naimue Brown, who also provided the words for this video. Many people crave a spiritual life without wanting to belong to rigid religions with the almost unavoidable power structures and politics that involves. This book explores how to construct your own spiritual path, considering the implications of seeking a spiritual path without wanting organized religion to dominate it. As such, it has applications for pagans, atheists, agnostics, heretics from any mainstream faith, and seekers of all kinds. It's available from Moonbooks Publishing. Thank you so much for watching. A special thank you to our members. You too can become a member and gain early access to videos just like this one. Hit the join button for more information. Subscribe for weekly videos, ring the bell for notifications, and we will see you next time.